Hello and welcome to this virtual lecture recital. I'm Liana Valente, coordinator of classical voice at Howard University in Washington, D.C., and I'm delighted to share art songs by five remarkable American composers with you today. Before we begin, I'd like to extend my thanks to Mrs. Ann Lee, my collaborative pianist. Ann and I met a few years ago at a CMS regional conference, and we performed a number of times since. Thank you, Ann, for joining me in these performances. I also want to thank the board of Convergence Church in Alexandria, Virginia, for offering a beautiful and safe place for us to record. The great music scholar Alfred Einstein defined the art song as the complete unity of text and music, the perfect equilibrium between vocal line and accompaniment. The repertoire chosen for today certainly exemplifies the power and beauty of this form. But I suspect much of this music will be new to you because this repertoire has mostly been ignored due to the composer's skin color or gender or both. It's my hope that you will leave this session inspired to further explore the music of these composers and commit to including their works and the works of other composers of color when choosing repertoire for yourself and your students. That was Love Let the Wind Cry by Undine Smith Moore, and I'm sure you'll agree that it exemplifies Einstein's definition of art song. This fine example of the exquisite miniature is certainly able to stand alongside the music of such revered American song composers as John Duke, Sam Barber, Ned Rorem, and Aaron Copland. Moore is often referred to as the Dean of Black women composers, in large part because of her work at Virginia State College from 1927 to 1972, where her positions included chairing the theory department, directing the college choir, and serving as acting chair of the music department. Moore was asked what constituted Black music. She replied, "Black music is a house of many mansions. Blacks have many musics, and some of them relate in an extremely universal way to the human condition." She also said, "Black music is, in its simplest and broadest terms, simply music written by a Black person." Moore wrote music for solo voice and chamber ensembles, solo instruments, and choral works. She was a graduate of Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee, and received the first scholarship given by Fisk to study at the Juilliard School. The Fisk Jubilee Singers recorded many of her choral works, including Lord, We Give Thanks to Thee, which they commissioned from Moore for their centennial celebration. Love Let the Wind Cry is Moore's most widely performed art song. It was written as a wedding gift for one of her theory students, Leon Thompson, and his wife, Jewel, and was premiered at their wedding. During the 1960s, with the emergence of the Black arts movement, Moore co-founded the Black Music Center at Virginia State College with Professor Altona Trent Johns, bringing leading Black musicians and lecturers to campus to teach and showcase their work. Moore and Professor Johns co-directed The Black Man in American Music, a project from 1968 to 1972 that was funded 3 times by the National Endowment for the Humanities and also by the Southern Educational Foundation. It was a humanities course at the college focused on the study of Black music, art, and literature. The Library of Congress has created the digital Alan Lomax collection comprised of 61 slides that explores this project. Moore said, the aim of the project was to promote appreciation for the music of the Black man in America through performances of, as well as study of, the music. It further attempted to elevate Black music to a level commensurate with its influence upon other musics of the world. You may be familiar with Harry Burleigh as the first great arranger of spirituals. The 1917 publication of his Deep River inspired him to publish more than a dozen spiritual arrangements that year. His arrangements became so popular with the great recitalists of the time, including Roland Hayes, Marian Anderson, and Paul Robeson, that soon it became customary for singers to end their programs with Burleigh spirituals. But he was much more than simply an arranger. Burleigh was an accomplished and sought-after baritone, composer, and charter member of ASCAP. His first art songs were published in 1898 and were written in the late Romantic style, influenced by his teachers, Victor Herbert and Antonin Dvorak. While studying at the conservatory, Burleigh became Dvorak's copyist and librarian of the conservatory orchestra. He often sang plantation songs and spirituals for Dvorak. Symphony No. 9 from the New World was written and premiered while Burleigh was at the conservatory, and Dvorak even used a portion of Swing Low, Sweet Chariot as a theme in the first movement. And it was Dvorak who encouraged Burleigh to preserve the melodies of the old spirituals, work songs, and plantation songs in his own compositions. Burleigh composed over 265 vocal compositions, including choral pieces, secular and sacred art songs, and song cycles. By 1915, his art songs were regarded as being among the best American art songs. Our next selection is from the first song cycle Burleigh wrote, Saracen Songs, designed in the form of a miniature opera scene in 7 parts for 4 characters. It was published in 1914 while Burleigh was a staff editor at Ricordi. Thou Art Weary is the 5th song of the cycle. Pianist and composer Florence Price was the first African-American woman to have a work performed by a major symphony orchestra. Her symphony in E minor, which won the 1932 Wanamaker Prize, was premiered in 1933 by the Chicago Symphony Orchestra during the World's Fair. But while this performance earned her national attention, she struggled throughout her lifetime for acceptance. After graduating from the New England Conservatory in 1906 with degrees in performance and education, Price headed the music department at Clark Atlantic University in 1910. She returned to Arkansas in 1912 to teach and compose, marrying Thomas J. Price that same year. In 1927, the family left Arkansas after a vicious lynching in their neighborhood, settling in Chicago. After filing for divorce in 1931, Price supported herself and two daughters, accompanying silent films, teaching piano, and composing. It was while in Chicago that she became friends with Langston Hughes, Marian Anderson, and Margaret Bonds. Price composed over 300 works, almost a third of which were songs and spiritual arrangements. The past 10 years have brought a renewed interest in her works, especially her piano compositions. However, Price's place in American music history will forever be connected to that famous Easter Sunday concert at the Lincoln Memorial in 1939, when more than 75,000 people listened as Marian Anderson concluded her performance with Price's arrangement of "My Soul's Been Anchored in the Lord." Price's art songs have been performed in concert halls by some of the great performers of the day, including Leontine Price, Roland Hayes, and William Warfield. Her papers, donated by her daughter in 1974, are housed in the Special Collections Division of the University of Arkansas. "Night" is our next selection. H. Leslie Adams is the only living composer on today's program, and I had the great honor of meeting and working with him in the early 1990s in Knoxville, Tennessee, when he was preparing the premiere of his opera, Blake. Dr. Adams is a prolific composer. His catalog includes works for full orchestra, chamber ensembles, solo instruments, and choirs. He's also a respected and sought-after teacher. This year, Dr. Adams joined the National Association of Teachers of Singing Art Song Mentoring Program. He'll serve as a general mentor to all 10 of the chosen emerging composers. While Dr. Adams has published only 43 songs to date, the beauty and scope of his output can allow us to place him alongside these other master composers. Of particular interest is his setting of the Malay poem, "For You There Is No Song," probably his most performed art song. Grant Still is our final composer today and is often referred to as the Dean of African American classical composers. Compared to other African American classical composers of his time, Still was by far the most successful. Still's career includes an extraordinary list of firsts. The first African American to have a symphony performed by a major US orchestra. The first African American to conduct a major symphony orchestra in the US. The first African American composer to have an opera produced by a major company in the US. The first African American to conduct a major symphony orchestra in the Deep South. The first African American composer to have an opera performed on national television. An integral part of the Harlem Renaissance movement, he left a rich legacy of instrumental and vocal works in the classical, jazz, blues, and popular styles, composing over 150 works, including 5 symphonies, 4 ballets, and 9 operas. It seems only fitting to include a recording of grief today. During this time of great loss and sorrow, we can all find some solace in this most profound example of American art song. There's an interesting bit of sleuthing history associated with Still's art song, Grief. It was composed in 1953, was registered with the Copyright Office on June 15th, and was originally published by the Oliver Dietzen Music Company in 1955. However, a subsequent published version introduced an error. The final note of the vocal line was changed to a dissonant tone a step higher than the original. According to an article by Wendy Maloney, writer-editor in the US Copyright Office, this dissonance extends a mood of sadness through the end of the song. Still's family was certain this was not his intention, but it wasn't until 2009 when his daughter, Judith Ann Still, found the original copyright submission that Still's intentions for the end of the song were confirmed. Indeed, the song ends with a consonance, suggesting a sense of rest and relief that resolves grief. As you look at the two examples on this slide, you'll notice that the 1977 publication on the right was transposed down a step from the original. Perhaps the erroneous final pitch was simply a transcription error. I strongly recommend these two anthologies for further exploration of art songs and spiritual arrangements by African American composers. They offer a variety of styles and difficulty levels, and you'll find repertoire suitable for students and singers of all ages and abilities. We hope that this short recital has inspired you to learn more about these and other extraordinary African American composers. Let us continue to expand the canon of American art song composers to include even more talented composers of color, sharing the power and beauty of their works with our students and with new audiences. Einstein reminds us that art song is the complete unity of text and music. I think you'll agree that the 5 composers presented today clearly demonstrate that high ideal. Thank you.